Hey, what's up guys? And today's video we're going to answer the question, should my agency start a SaaS? Let's get into it. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand how you're uniquely qualified as an agency owner to build a successful SaaS and how you're in the top percentile of SaaS founders. Then we're going to cover what critical elements you're missing for an effective transformation, followed up by a practical framework that you can use to evaluate if your agency is truly ready for a SaaS business. Lastly, we're going to get into practical steps into beginning your agency to SaaS journey. So before I get into this, you're probably wondering, who am I and who am I to talk about building a SaaS as an agency? So I'm George, I'm the CEO of Startino, and 2 years ago, we entered the SaaS space where we started our SaaS development company. And over these 2 years, we've studied hundreds of SaaS stories. And more recently, 6 months ago, we came across the story of Mailchimp, the $12 billion email marketing company. And we realized it was agency founders that founded it. And we kept seeing this pattern repeated over and over again, where it was agency founders building SaaS products. And so after studying 15 agency to SaaS transformations, we created our own agency to SaaS playbook. And this video is going to be covering the first step of this playbook. So before we figure out whether your agency is ready to build a SaaS product, I want it to be very clear about what a SaaS can actually give you. Firstly, it's going to be life-changing profits. A SaaS business is typically between 50 to 70% profit margins, whereas an agency business is usually between 10 to 30%. Secondly, it's no endless firefighting. A SaaS business is built for growth, whereas an agency business, inherently, it's built for firefighting. And thirdly, you're going to be selling competence, not time. And whether this time is your own or it's your employees, with a SaaS business, you're embedding your expertise in a tech product. And what that allows you to do is have a much larger impact in your industry. By building a tech product once, you're able to serve this to an unlimited amount of users. And lastly, a SaaS business sells for 5 to 7x more than agencies do with the same amount of revenue. So now that you understand how valuable a SaaS can be if you add it to your agency, I'm going to get into the plan and what we're going to cover in this video. So firstly, we're going to cover why agency founders are top percentile SaaS founders. And then we're going to cover what agency owners lack and how to get it. Then we're going to cover a practical SaaS readiness framework that you can use to figure out exactly if your agency is ready, and if it's not, what can you work on? And lastly, we're going to go through practical action steps that you can take to start your journey. So, why agency founders? We have Nathan Latka that says agency owners in their 20s make the best SaaS CEOs in their 30s. Nathan Latka is the biggest SaaS podcast host, an ex-founder, and he said this himself, and the numbers are relevant here. His main point is that agency owners, someone that started an agency in the past, is the best SaaS CEO. And he, after 3,000 interviews with SaaS founders, created this thing called the agency to SaaS hack, where he recommends SaaS founders to first start off with an agency and then build a SaaS product after that. Why? For 3 main reasons. And these 3 reasons are the 3 biggest reasons why a SaaS company typically fails. And the first reason is you have validated market insights. And what this means is you are not pulling at straws for SaaS ideas like every other SaaS founder. What you are doing is you're going to find a really painful and repeated workflow in your business, and you're going to spin that out as a SaaS. This reason associates with no product market fit. Product market fit is essentially when you have a problem that people find it's worth paying for. And this allows you to grow really, really fast. And because they're pulling at ideas from a whiteboard, they can't find that immediately. Whereas your problem is directly rooted in a really painful and repeated process. Secondly, you have financial runway from services. Your service revenue can fund the development and marketing phase of your product. And as long as your agency is still running, you can continue working on your SaaS product. You're still in the game. A typical SaaS founder, they're either bootstrapped or they're funded. If they were bootstrapped, they have a rainy day fund that they're saving up. They're racing against time. Same for the funded people. If you're funded by venture capital, you have a fund that once it runs out, you're out of the game. The only way for each of these is to continue playing the game is by getting more revenue. And for a bootstrap, this just means breaking even. And for a funded, this means getting to your next round of funding. Playing against time is really risky. You as an agency owner, you have unlimited time to figure out what works and what doesn't, which allows you to have much higher chances of success. And the last one is you have built-in validation via clients and your industry relationships. I think every SaaS founder would agree with me here. This is the most painful part of any SaaS product because getting your first 10 users, or evangelists as I call them, is super painful and slow and tedious. Usually you're throwing things at a wall and hoping something sticks. But for you, your 10 evangelists, your 10 first users will be coming from people you already know. And another person that backs up why agency founders are the best SaaS founders is David Hart. And this is the agency-to-SaaS guy himself. He built and scaled an agency, which he then pivoted into SaaS, which he recently exited for, making a lot of money. And now he does consulting for agencies that want to pivot to SaaS. He says, if I were a betting man, I'd bet on the former founders of an agency before I'd bet on a couple bright guys out of McKinsey. I'm not trying to toot your own horn here, right? These are people that are deep in the SaaS industry that are also agreeing with me here. And these are all the reasons why David Hart says an agency founder is really well suited. As you go through this list, you could probably see yourself in a lot of these. As long as you have a majority of these, and if you've been running your agency for 5 to 15 years, you should. So David Hart also has this concept called the product sector matrix. It's a visual way to understand how you are positioned as a SaaS founder in the SaaS space. So on the y-axis, we have sector. This is your sector experience, your experience within a sector. And on the x-axis, we have the product experience. And so the most successful SaaS teams are up here in the top left. You right now are in the top right. You have tons of sector experience, and I'm assuming you haven't tried building any tech products before. Someone like us, where we're really technical and we've tried building a lot of tech products before, we're in the bottom right, where we have a lot of product experience, but no sector experience, okay? So if we were to combine someone like us and someone like you would reach a really strong SaaS team. And so this gets us to our next point. You lack all of this. This is what you lack. You lack a tech partner, okay? In this section, we're gonna cover what you lack, which is a tech partner. And in this section, you're gonna understand why technical expertise is critical. You're gonna understand the key differences between hiring a developer versus hiring an agency and versus finding a technical co-founder. We're also gonna go over how to properly evaluate and approach potential co-founders. And then lastly, we're gonna go into practical guidance on equity considerations when you bring in this new tech co-founder. These are the sections we're gonna go through. So when do I need a tech partner? When should I start looking for one? Why you should not just hire a developer. This is the biggest mistake I could see an agency founder make. And then you might be considering, okay, what about an agency? Maybe. Why a tech co-founder matters. This is going to be the juice of this section. And you shouldn't be scared to give away equity. And I'll explain exactly why. And then lastly, we'll get into the practical part of where and how to find a tech partner. Also including red flags and common mistakes. So let's get into it. So when should you start looking for a tech partner? So I would say it's not needed until the actual build phase. Ideation, so coming up with the idea, validating, so proving there's a demand for this, and building the prototype. So all of these phases don't need a tech co-founder, but having the knowledge of this step along with starting the search process is a good idea. And the perfect candidate isn't just good at tech, they're well versed in the SaaS space, which means if you were to have a tech co-founder from the very start, they would save you time in making mistakes in the ideation, validation, and even prototyping phase. So we're gonna go from the worst options to the best options. And the worst mistake you could ever do is hire a developer. You might be thinking, I could just hire a cheap developer to build what I need. Out of the hundreds of SaaS journeys that I've studied, very few of the successful ones were built by just hiring a developer. And this is not even considering the survivorship bias. I don't even want to know how many of the failed ones just hired a developer, because I can imagine there's quite a few of them. And secondly is a developer, their incentives aren't aligned with you. They are going to be a transactional person in this business, and they actually benefit from this build taking longer. So if you pay them to build your first version, they get more paychecks if it takes longer, unless you're doing it on a project basis, but that has its own caveats, which I'll get into. And most likely, this developer is going to be a tech guy and not a product guy. And this is going to be a repeated theme across this whole section, because a tech guy can code, but he doesn't speak tech product. And by tech product, this is the bridge between the tech and the business. And this is super important because the communication gap that you have between this is going to really slow you down. A couple other reasons why you shouldn't hire a developer is extremely risky. A developer, out of all the stories that I've seen in SaaS, developers are the least reliable. They're the most risky because you can pay them for an agreed amount and they can just leave. There is no suing them. There is no doing this and that. They will just leave and take your money. That is a very possible situation. If you're thinking about hiring a developer, the reason you are is probably because it's cheap. It's a lot cheaper than the alternatives. But it is so true that you're going to buy cheap. If you buy cheap, you buy twice in the SaaS space. And now an agency is in the middle ground of having a real tech partner and a developer. It's slightly better, but it's still nowhere near as advantageous, okay? There's a couple reasons why an agency is better than a developer. Number one is there's some risk protection. An agency has a reputation to maintain. They have a brand that they need to maintain, but this isn't a guarantee. I've seen many stories where well-reputable agencies completely ghost their clients, 50 to 100K down the drain. The second reason is they're likely faster than a developer, and this could be really helpful, but they could also be slower than a developer because of the overhead that they have. Now we're going to get into the downsides of an agency and why it's still not the perfect solution. Number one is it's going to be a higher long-term costs. You're paying for the overhead of an agency. It's the better interface. You have a product manager probably. You're going to have more developers, and this all depends down to if it's a good agency, right? Like we're going to get into how you can properly vet an agency or developer and tech co-founder. And the second reason is because you're dependent on their technical expertise. You are going to have very little clue in terms of what's actually going on with the tech product, because they're going to put a happy face in front of all the bad things that are going on the tech side of things. And if you don't know that, it could come crumbling down when you need to replace them. And then there's misaligned incentives. This is the same as with developers. An agency will benefit if the project takes longer. Let's assume two scenarios. Let's do project-based per unit time. So this could be a retainer or an hourly. So if they're doing a project-based, so the upside is you're going to have an agreed scope. They're going to build it out for a fixed cost, right? They benefit getting it done as fast as possible. The downside is if you need to make any single change, you're not going to have the flexibility that you need in a SaaS startup. So because they're going to need to be sending a new contract with a new proposal, and you're going to have to send that payment, and all these back and forth for every scope change could easily add up to weeks of your timeline if you were to look at a 4-month timeline for building your initial versions. And if we were to look at the time-based pricing models, so if they charge per hour on a retainer, the downside is that they benefit just by taking longer. On the upside is you're not going to have all the overhead of contract signings, amending changes, and all these things. But for both these situations, you might be thinking, oh, but they benefit from a case study. We only realized this months after we started our SaaS development company, and that is a SaaS development company or a development company in general. What they do is development, but what a SaaS is development and then going to market. This is the sales, marketing, and all that, actually making money from your SaaS. And typically, a development agency will only do the development. So for them, success is just building what you need them to build. That is success for them. If they build what you need them to build, no matter the timeline or the cost or anything like that, they've succeeded. That's their North Star. And that's counterintuitive for you because you need to reach the end goal, which is going to market. And if we were to put this in one timeline, they could take forever for development, which pushes you back months at a time. And it's just really not efficient. So when would I recommend an agency? Very rarely, but the only time is that it's as a temporary solution while you're actually searching for a long-term technical co-founder, okay? Okay, so what are the common mistakes that people make when working with agencies? And these are very common, and the outcomes of it are quite drastic. So number one is ensuring you have full code ownership. You might think because you're paying them to write your code that you own everything. If in the contract it's not very explicit that you own everything they make and they can't do anything with this, then they could very easily sell this code, this product that you've paid for, and sell it to someone else, or they could sell this product under their agency to users. Secondly, you're going to need a plan so that they can transfer knowledge, because it's going to take weeks to months to transfer all their knowledge of this product that they've built into somebody new. And you want to make sure that when it comes, it's going to be efficient. Thirdly is you want to verify they have SaaS experience. And this is going to be a common point I bring up later, because someone that's really technical doesn't mean they're really good at building SaaS products. An older engineer that's really good, that has 15 years of experience, I've seen people like that build a SaaS product, and it is horrible for a couple reasons. Things like UI, the tech stack, which makes them really slow at working in it, and it just leads to a really choppy SaaS product. Tech experience does not transfer into SaaS experience. So if you're looking for an agency, make sure they have experience with SaaS. And the second last common mistake is you want to clarify the long-term agreements like support and maintenance. And this is contradictory because I say don't plan on working with agencies long-term, but as a backup plan, you want to understand what you can expect if you have to work with this agency long-term. And because it might sound like a surprise, but software is never perfect when it's finished. You might agree to 50K for a specific version, And as you use this product over the next couple of weeks, you keep finding bugs here and there, and you might be wondering, oh, they should be fixing this without me having to pay more. But that's not often the case. So I'd recommend making sure that those terms are clear and what are they actually going to give you for what cost after they build the initial versions. The last common mistake, and the most important, is you must go through all the references and vet them. And I mean call their references. If they have 20 previous clients, call all of them, because the chances are that all of those clients had a good experience is very slim, especially in the dev agency world. This is the only way to really reduce the risk of working with a bad agency. So now we're going to get into why a tech co-founder matters. Number one, tech startups require real engineering and the ability to iterate. So I'm going to use the analogy of building a boat. Building a tech startup, so a tech product, without a tech partner is like building this out of cardboard. A boat made out of cardboard will float for a tiny bit, but eventually if any wind or any waves come, it's going to sink undoubtedly. This is why you need a tech co-founder. I really like this analogy because it stresses that, sure, you can make it with vibe coding tools or a developer or an agency, but for how long? Because they'll settle for a short term, but in the long term, where you're trying to build a business that's making $2 million a year, you need this to be a sustainable business. And so what do they actually give you? What value do they actually bring? One of the most important ones is constructive debate and problem solving. And this is because they understand your vision. A tech co-founder, since they're working on you from the start ideally, they're going to understand the ins and outs of your product and how your customers are using it, what the problem is and how it's being solved. And this will allow you to build a product in much less time because they're not going to be building random shit that you told them to. And they're going to be able to give you constructive criticism. One really important thing that a tech co-founder should bring to the table, I'm going to use this analogy where you have two types of R. You have deconstructive and you have constructive. The deconstructive is where something like an ice block, where you chip away at it and you're left with the final piece of work. Whereas with constructive art, you're going to have an empty canvas and you put on paints, you put on things to make the art piece. With building tech products, you need to use the constructive art style, because with the deconstructive version, you're going to waste a lot of resources where all this ice that we've chipped off, that's just going to waste. Whereas with the constructive one, we only put what we need. So tech co-founder should bring this principle into your business. And that's where having SaaS experience instead of just tech experience is really helpful. And this one's not for everyone, but they can share the risk and emotional support. Maybe you're a lone wolf, but you having co-founders, you could probably understand this and how just the late night talks really helps in going through the ups and downs, because there will be ups and downs like in your agency. And lastly, this is going to be relevant whether you're looking to get funded or not. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of an investor. If a SaaS startup came to me and asked for money, I'm going to look for two things. I'm going to be looking for their business side of the business and their tech side of the business. And why? It's because if there was no tech side of the business, they're going to be really reliant on outside help to make this work. If an investor won't invest in a company that doesn't have a solid team that includes a tech partner, I would take their opinion seriously, because they've seen thousands of SaaS startups and they know that the most successful ones have a balanced founding team with tech expertise in the team and not outsourced. I think this is a really valid reason and kind of brings more proof to all I've been saying. All right, so as a agency founder looking to build a SaaS business, you're probably thinking, I don't want to give away half of this new tech product that I'm building to a partner. We already have 2 co-founders from our agency. The split would be so tiny. Maybe you have 3 co-founders. You should be able to provide a competitive comp package by mixing salary with equity. So this means you don't have to give 50%. You could give whatever is reasonable to this tech partner. You're going to have to negotiate with them. It doesn't have to be an equal split, because from your revenue, you should be able to give a pretty competitive salary, okay? But let's do the math. Let's play out the scenarios. If you have 2 other co-founders in your agency, so you're 3 founders, and you were to add a tech co-founder, you're now 4 people. In this new tech product, you each get 25%. Let's assume the SaaS business, you get it to $2 million a year in monthly revenue. This would translate to $10 to $14 million. You could sell it for about 10 to 14 million. Let's use the middle ground and just say 12 million. So each of you would be left with 12 divided by 4 people. You'd each be left with 3 million. So if you didn't have this tech founder, you'd be 3 people. And you'd each be left with 4 million. So this tech co-founder took 1 million from each of you, okay? We can also consider the scenario where it's just you and another co-founder in your agency. And now you're 3 total people, including this tech co-founder. So this is 33% that you get each. And if you just do the same math with a $2 million a year SaaS business, this is going to be valued at the same amount, roughly 12 million if we do the middle ground. And so it's the same math. 12 divided by 3, you each make 4 million. Or if you didn't have a tech partner, it would be 6 million. So he takes 2 million for himself from each of you guys. And so what I want to illustrate is that you're giving away $1 to $2 million of your new SaaS business in exchange for what? What is this? What is the result of actually working with a tech partner? So in my eyes, as someone that's studied hundreds of the SaaS stories that I have, it's so rare that I actually see one where they didn't have a tech co-founder. And that's not, like I said, that's not even considering the survivorship bias of all the ones that I don't see that did hire just a developer or didn't have a tech co-founder. I personally would trade off any amount of money to actually reach that point in the first place, because I don't think the chances of you reaching $2 million a year without a tech partner are realistic. Not only that, but also just to get there faster. Maybe you can get there, but in how long? 5 years, 10 years? Compare that with a tech partner. I can't give a number in terms of how much faster you can go, but it'll be a lot faster. I can guarantee that. Hopefully now you appreciate how much value a tech partner could bring, and hopefully you're convinced that you need one, because I genuinely think you do need one, okay? Any questions, Jonas?
Yeah. Can't the agency owner be the technical founder now with all the vibe coding tools? Like anyone can code net, right?
With a vibe coding tool, even myself, as someone with 7 years of programming experience, I can't even build something that I could qualify as something that would work in the market, because I can build a cool prototype like that with something like Lovable or Bolt, but after going beyond just a simple prototype into an actual SaaS product that I can give to users and iterate on, that's a big gap. And maybe in 1 to 2 years, that gap is going to get really, really small. And maybe you don't need a tech co-founder. At some point, you're going to need to throw all that code away because it's absolute garbage code. And then you're going to have to build something from scratch. It can help you go from 0 to prototype, but that prototype is not going to really be helpful in any other way other than showing, maybe getting investors or demonstrating the proof of concept to potential users. So now, hopefully you understand the value of how important it is to have a tech co-founder. And now we're going to get into the practical side of how and where to find one. You're going to start with your existing network and seek out people who genuinely enjoy coding and ideally have SaaS experience and not just tech experience, okay? How you're going to do this is by going to your existing network, people that you have in your LinkedIn, on your Rolodex, on your phone book, on your WhatsApp, whatever you have, and calling them and asking them, hey, do you know anyone in the tech field that I can work with to build my SaaS product? Another option is contractor platforms and matchmaking platforms. Contractor platforms, number one, is the people on there usually don't have the skill sets that you need. They often don't want to be a partner in a SaaS product. They're happy collecting paychecks. So YC co-founder matchmaking, there have been success stories from it, but you have to set realistic expectations, right? Like there's a lot of people that also say it's very useless. I would only recommend using your existing network. So let's assume you have a list of candidates of tech partners. How are you going to decide whether they're a good fit? You're going to do small projects. And this could just be a prototype. This could be a for fun project. This could be whatever, just to understand working styles, communication, and their stress response. You want to know that you are partners and building this together and not just a code monkey. If they're a code monkey, you might as well have hired a developer. And to make sure they're not just a code monkey, you need to be fair in the equity that you give them or the stake that you give them, whether it's a revenue share or whatever, right? And you want to make sure that these conversations happen as early as possible, because you don't want to do a bunch of work with them and then you get to the point where I'm going to give you 5% and they're just like, what? And if they're pushing back these conversations, that's a big red flag, okay? They want to be talking about this as early as possible. It shows they know what they're talking about. There's a couple red flags to watch out for when you're finding a tech partner. Finding a tech co-founder in general, you're probably pretty familiar with, because a lot of it is just in general finding a business partner. And I'm guessing you have co-founders, you understand how important this is to find someone that you can really work with. And it's like you're getting married, so you want to make sure that you don't skip the dating process. And this means doing trial projects, just having fun together, having talks. Don't rush into it. The second one is there's misaligned time and financial commitments. And this is why you need to discuss all these things up front, and be very transparent about what equity you're willing to give them, what salary you're willing to give them, what their role would be in this company, and making sure that they understand that, because any miscommunication later down the road could be very costly in terms of your momentum and just wasted time. Secondly, we want to watch out for previous partnership issues. And this for the same for agencies and developers. You want to call their references. Call people that they've previously worked with. Call their previous partners if they have any. And so the last one, this one's a bit of a underrated one. They're just blindly building the vision. There's a lot of tech people that are happy to join a startup just because it's a tech startup, like it's just appealing. If they're just blindly building your vision and building what you tell them without giving any input or any constructive debate, that's really not partner material. Because at that point, just hire a developer. Like there's not much benefit in someone that's just building what you tell them to without actually giving some insights. And this is where I think the people that can give the best input and the best insights are people with SaaS experience. A point that I've iterated many times. Tech experience does not equal SaaS experience. And this is super important because someone could be really good at tech, but if they don't understand how SaaS businesses work and how the SaaS tech works, it's not going to translate into efficiency. So now we're going to get into the rubric that you can use to understand and assess if your agency is ready to build a SaaS. So this rubric, we're going to mark it on 3 different levels. So we have level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 3 is the best. So the first criteria, and these are taken directly from David Hart and Nathan Latka's reasons why agency founders are well suited. So number 1 is your clients, your client access, your client insights. And so I'm going to use a metric, the amount of clients that you have. And I'll explain that why in a bit. So for level 1, I would say if you have between 1 to 5 clients, you're not really well suited to build a SaaS just yet. If you have 5 to 15, you're moderately ready to start a SaaS business. And if you have more than 15, you have everything you need out of your clients to successfully start a SaaS business. And so what does the clients criteria actually give you? So the amount of clients that you have in your business directly relates to why you're qualified as a SaaS founder, because this is correlated to how many problems that you have in your business. It correlates to how much experience you have in the industry. And it correlates to how many initial users you can get for your business. And the next criteria is your financial runway. And in this step, the level 1, I would say, is you're making 5K a month in profit. This is profit. So, or sorry, not profit, but 5K that you can allocate to a SaaS product. And it doesn't mean you have to spend 5K, but it means you have this amount to put into the SaaS product. The mid-level is you're moderately ready, is you have 10 to 15K a month in available spend for the SaaS product. And of course, the last one is just more than 15K. So why is this important? Number 1 is for the developer or your tech partner. You need to give them a salary for them to be incentivized and work on this product. The second one is you need this money to keep the business afloat. As long as you have money going into your SaaS product, you're in the game. And in the initial phase, this is going to be the tech founder. And in the later phase, this is going to be the tech co-founder along with marketing and sales. And the next criteria is your industry experience. And to put a metric on this, we're going to determine how niched you are. And so the first one is going to be an everything agency. Not enough space. So if you're an everything agency, you're pretty poorly suited to build a SaaS business, because with a SaaS business, the more niche you are, the more of a moat you have, because the more specific of a problem that you're solving. If you're moderately well suited, this means you are sort of niche down. So let's say an SEO agency, if you specifically focus on SEO. And the step above that is your niched agency, and you have some proprietary frameworks that ideally are well known, and you're an authority in your specific niche. So proprietary frameworks. And the next criteria is your tech capability. So this is going to be, the first step is going to be obviously nothing. You have no one in your team that has technical experience, and building a website or connecting, APIs, I'm not really going to count that. I mean someone that has coding experience. And this is the one that most agency founders are going to be lacking. And that's why I went so deep into how to find a tech co-founder. So the middle ground is someone in your team has tech experience. Maybe they're not the perfect candidate, or you have access to contractors. So already a referral in place. Maybe you've done a previous product with them, something like that. But like I said, freelancers aren't the best, which is why, so let's do contractors or in-house partial talent. The final one, of course, is tech co-founder or tech partner. And you likely don't have this, and if you do, that's amazing. All right, I need another page. And the final criteria is your bandwidth. your founder bandwidth. And why this is important is because if you in your agency are having to fight fires and none of your founders have time in your business to allocate to this, it's not going to work out. David Hart has a very strong stance that a side project will always be a side project. And if you don't properly allocate time and resources into this, it's never going to make it anywhere. Level 1, I would say, is one founder can give 2 hours a week. They can allocate 2 hours a week to building the SaaS product. And that's not really good enough. The second step would be you can have one founder allocating 4 to 8 hours a week. And this is already getting pretty solid. With a tech partner along with one of your existing founders, this should be enough to get things going. And the best case scenario is you have one dedicated founder or you can have 2 founders doing 4 to 8 hours a week. And none of these metrics are set in stone, but from the 15 agency to SaaS transformations that I've analyzed, these are pretty good metrics that you can use to determine roughly if your agency is ready to start with a SaaS product. And so those are all the criteria that I'm going to use to determine whether your agency is ready to build a SaaS product. I'm going to leave this rubric in the description below in a Google Doc. You can easily fill it out yourself. And so now we're going to talk about practical steps that you can take to starting your SaaS journey. And the first step obviously is going to be finishing out that rubric that I just gave you. So go in the description to get the Google Doc. You can start ideating potential ideas. And a key point is don't brainstorm new ideas. Find problems in your business that are painful and repeated. This is how you're going to avoid one of the most common reasons that a SaaS business fails. You don't want to be pulling at straws. And you want to start finding a tech partner. This is going to be super useful to start now because it's going to be a long process. And before I sign off, I want to give one last note. I think that agencies are going to be cut very thin in the next few years due to AI. And if you don't ride this wave, you're going to be left behind and be one of the agencies that is reselling someone else's product. Agencies that I've spoken to are already starting to build SaaS products. That's my last note. I hope you guys found this valuable, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.